January 27, 1945. The snow fell softly on the cold iron bars of the Auschwitz camp gate as Soviet soldiers cautiously entered the abandoned complex. The silence was deafening. Rows of wooden barracks stretched out like skeletal fingers, bearing witness to the unimaginable horrors within. A faint smell of burning documents and wet uniforms hung in the air, mingling with the stench of death and decay. Suddenly, a soldier stumbled upon a hidden room, the walls lined with files, each one a life, a story, a family torn apart. Among the papers, a single diary caught his eye, its pages yellowed and worn. The entry spoke of a young girl, no more than 15, who had been forced into the camp's brutal reality. Her final entry read, "I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The silence is the worst part. It's as if we're already gone." As the soldier closed the diary, a chill ran down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding not just a piece of history, but a piece of himself. The weight of what he had witnessed would stay with him forever, a constant reminder of the atrocities humanity had committed. And yet, even in the midst of such darkness, the diary's words whispered a haunting question: what would you have done to survive? Subscribe for more historical documentaries that uncover the untold stories of World War II's most harrowing moments. The snow-covered streets of Auschwitz, a small Polish town, seemed eerily quiet as the winter of 1945 approached. The once thriving community, where Poles and Jews had lived side by side for generations, was now a mere shadow of its former self. The town's Jewish population had been forcibly relocated to the nearby Auschwitz concentration camp, their homes and businesses left abandoned. The sound of distant artillery fire echoed through the streets, a constant reminder of the war's relentless approach. In a small, cramped room within the camp's administrative building, SS officer, Obersturmführer Klaus, sat at his desk, typing away on his worn typewriter. The clicking keys seemed to punctuate the silence, as if trying to drown out the whispers of the damned. Klaus's eyes narrowed as he typed, his mind consumed by the task at hand, documenting the processing of the latest batch of prisoners. The smell of cigarette smoke and stale air hung heavy in the room, a stark contrast to the cold, calculating efficiency with which he worked. Meanwhile, in the camp's barracks, prisoners huddled together for warmth, their eyes sunken, their bodies emaciated. The sound of coughing and moaning filled the air, punctuated by the occasional shout of a guard. Among them was a young woman, Sarah, who clutched a small, leather-bound diary to her chest. The diary was her lifeline, her confidant, her only connection to a world beyond the camp's barbed wire fences. As Klaus finished typing, he pulled out the sheet of paper and carefully reviewed the document. His eyes paused on a single sentence: 500 prisoners sent to the gas chambers. A flicker of emotion crossed his face, but it was quickly extinguished. He was a man doing a job, after all. The clicking of the typewriter resumed, as he began to draft a report on the efficient use of Zyklon B. The snow outside continued to fall, casting a serene silence over the camp. But within the barracks, the prisoners knew the truth: the silence was a mere illusion. The war was getting closer, and the end was nowhere in sight. As Sarah scribbled in her diary, she whispered a question that would haunt her for the rest of her life: what will be the cost of survival? As the chapter ends, the sound of distant artillery fire grows louder, and the prisoners' hopes are raised. But what secrets lie hidden in the camp's administrative offices, and what will happen to Sarah and the other prisoners as the war draws to a close? Sarah's hands trembled as she scribbled in her diary, the pencil marks faint on the thin paper. She wrote of the day's events, of the endless roll calls, the meager rations, and the cruel whims of the guards. But amidst the descriptions of suffering, she poured out her emotions, the longing for her family, the fear of the unknown, and the desperation that threatened to consume her. As she wrote, the sounds of the camp faded into the background, and for a moment, she was free. free to remember the laughter of her siblings, the smell of her mother's cooking, and the warmth of her father's smile. The diary became her sanctuary, a place where she could momentarily escape the horrors surrounding her. In the margins, Sarah drew small sketches, flowers, birds, and stars, tiny acts of defiance against the darkness. Her drawings were a testament to the human spirit's capacity to find beauty, even in the most inhumane of places. As she closed the diary, a guard's shout pierced the air, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She hid the diary beneath her thin mattress, her hands shaking as she smoothed out the wrinkles. The guard, a young man with a scar above his left eyebrow, sneered at Sarah. "You think you're special, don't you?" he taunted, his breath reeking of cheap tobacco. "You think you can keep your secrets hidden?" Sarah's eyes dropped, and she nodded, trying to avoid his wrath. The guard's cruelty was a palpable thing, a force that could crush her at any moment. As the guard moved on, Sarah's thoughts turned to the rumors circulating among the prisoners, of Allied forces approaching, of liberation, of an end to their suffering. She dared to hope, but the fear of disappointment was suffocating. What if the rumors were just that, rumors? What if they were too late? The diary, now a tangible connection to her past, seemed to weigh heavier beneath the mattress. Sarah's final entry for the day read, "I dream of walking out of these gates, of feeling the sun on my face, and of hearing the sound of birds singing. But what if the birds don't sing for me?" As the chapter ends, the sound of distant artillery fire grows louder, and the prisoners' hopes are raised once more. But what secrets lie hidden in the hearts of the guards, and what will happen to Sarah and the other prisoners as the war's outcome becomes increasingly uncertain? The typewriter in Klaus's office clicks away, drafting reports of the final solution. But amidst the paperwork, a different story is unfolding, one of human resilience, of hope, and of the power of the human spirit. The snow-covered landscape stretched out before the Soviet soldiers like an endless white canvas, untouched and pristine. But the soldiers knew better, the pristine landscape hid the scars of war, the stench of death, and the whispers of the damned. Lieutenant Petrov's eyes scanned the horizon, his mind fixed on the task ahead. Their unit had been tasked with liberating Auschwitz, a place he'd heard whispers about in hushed tones. As they approached the camp, the silence was oppressive, the air thick with an unspoken dread. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances, their faces set in determined lines. They had seen the worst of humanity, but this was different. This was a place where humanity had lost its way, and the soldiers entered, their footsteps echoing off the wooden barracks. The prisoners, skeletal and hollow-eyed, emerged from the buildings, unsure of what to make of the sudden silence. Sarah, her eyes sunken, her skin sallow, stood among them, her diary clutched tightly in her hand. Petrov's eyes met Sarah's, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. The soldier's expression softened, and he took a step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're here. We're going to take care of you." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she nodded, the diary slipping from her grasp. Petrov caught it, his fingers tracing the worn leather cover. "This was your lifeline," he whispered, his eyes locking onto hers. As the soldiers began to tend to the prisoners, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to the diary's final entry, "I dream of walking out of these gates, of feeling the sun on my face, and of hearing the sound of birds singing." The gates were open now, and the sun shone down on her face, but the birds remained silent. The silence was almost deafening, a reminder of all that had been lost. The soldiers worked tirelessly, providing what little comfort they could. As the day wore on, the sound of distant artillery fire grew fainter, replaced by the murmur of voices, the rustle of blankets, and the soft sobs of the liberated. The smell of bread wafted through the camp, and Sarah's stomach growled in response. She took a tentative bite, the taste exploding on her tongue. It was a small pleasure, but it was enough to hold on to. As the chapter ends, Sarah stands at the threshold of a new chapter in her life, one marked by freedom, but also by the memories of the past. The diary, now a tangible connection to her experiences, would remain a secret testament to the horrors she endured. But as she looked up at the sky, she whispered a question that would haunt her for the rest of her life: how do I find my voice in a world that seems so silent? The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Sarah's body began to heal, but the scars on her mind would take longer to fade. The Soviet soldiers had done their best to provide for the prisoners, but the road to recovery was long and arduous. As Sarah regained her strength, she found herself struggling to reconcile the past with the present. She would see a guard's uniform in the distance, and her heart would still race with fear. The sound of a barking dog would send her running for cover. The memories of the camp lingered, refusing to be silenced. Sarah's eyes would wander to the diary, now a tangible connection to her experiences, and she would wonder, what did the future hold for her? Petrov, the Soviet soldier who had liberated the camp, would visit her often, bringing small gifts of food and clothing. He would sit with her in silence, listening as she poured out her story, her tears, and her fears. Sarah found solace in his presence, and he, in turn, found a sense of purpose in helping her heal. One day, as they sat together in the sun-drenched courtyard, Petrov handed Sarah a small package. "I found this in the guards' quarters," he said, his voice low. "I think it might belong to you." Inside the package was a photograph, a picture of Sarah's family, taken on a happy summer day, before the war. She had thought it was lost forever. The tears streamed down her face as she gazed at the smiling faces, the memories flooding back. As Sarah looked up at Petrov, she saw the weight of his own memories etched on his face. They sat in silence, the photograph between them, a poignant reminder of what they had both endured. The silence was a testament to the bond they shared, a bond forged in a fire of suffering, and tempered by the shared humanity that had seen them through. The sound of children playing in the distance drifted over, a stark contrast to the silence that had once shrouded the camp. Sarah's eyes followed the sound, and she saw a group of children laughing and chasing each other, their faces carefree. For a moment, she forgot about the past, and the weight of her memories lifted. As the chapter ends, Sarah stands at a crossroads, torn between the past and the future. The diary, now a testament to her survival, remains a powerful reminder of what she endured. But as she looks out at the world, reborn from the ashes, she wonders, can she find a way to heal, to forgive, and to rediscover her voice in a world that still whispers in silence? The years passed, and Sarah rebuilt her life, but the memories of Auschwitz never truly left her. She would find herself walking down a street, smelling the scent of freshly baked bread, and suddenly, she was back in the camp, her stomach growling with hunger. The sounds of laughter and conversation would fade into the background as she relived the moments she thought she'd long forgotten. Sarah's diary, now a tangible piece of her history, remained a treasured possession. She would occasionally open it, reading the words she'd written in desperation, in hope, and in survival. The words still held the power to move her, to bring back the emotions she'd felt in those dark times. But as she read, she began to see the diary in a new light. It wasn't just a record of her suffering, but a testament to her resilience. One day, Sarah received an invitation to speak at a gathering of Holocaust survivors. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to confront her past in such a public way. But something inside her stirred. She thought of the diary, of the words she'd written, and the silence she'd endured. She thought of Petrov, who had listened to her without judgment, and the children she'd seen playing in the courtyard. Sarah stood on the stage, the microphone in her hand, and took a deep breath. She began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. She spoke of the diary, of the words that had saved her, of the silence that had almost consumed her. She spoke of the memories that still haunted her, but also of the hope that had sustained her. The room fell silent. The audience was transfixed, hanging on her every word. Sarah's voice grew stronger, more confident. She spoke of the power of sharing her story, of breaking the silence that had held her captive for so long. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears as she looked out at the sea of faces. She knew she wasn't alone. There were others who had endured similar trials, who had also known the weight of silence. And in that moment, she found a sense of peace, a sense of closure. The diary, now a symbol of her past, would remain with her forever. But it would no longer define her. Sarah had found her voice, and with it, she would tell her story, ensuring that the silence of the past would never be forgotten. As the curtain falls on Sarah's story, we are left to ponder the power of silence and the importance of sharing our experiences. The diary, a testament to the human spirit, serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. And as we reflect on the past, we are reminded that our stories have the power to shape the future. This concludes The Silent Barracks, Liberating Auschwitz's Forgotten Voices. If you'd like to explore more stories like this or discuss the themes and historical context, I'd be happy to continue the conversation.